Hey guys, my name's Ben McCarthy, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So the first couple of videos I released here on YouTube didn't feature any guitar playing at all, so I thought now would be a good opportunity to sort of introduce myself as Ben the guitar player. So today I thought it would be fun to perform 4 guitar solos from 4 different tracks that I've released this year, that's 2022. 3 from my debut solo EP, Light Shade in the Crescent Moon, and 1 from my single Cold Fusion that I released a couple months ago. All of my music can be found on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you like to listen, links in the description below. As I've also just moved house, all of my gear is currently in boxes, so I thought it would be a good opportunity to try and recreate the tone of some of those original solos using just this, the Line 6 Helix. I found the Helix to be a really useful tool when recording, but I've never really fell in love with the actual sounds or tones, not enough for me to kind of want to actually plug and play through it. So I'll talk a little bit about the signal chain and the tone from the original record, and we'll see how close we can get to it using just this. So first up we've got the track All or Nothing, which has got my favourite solo from that EP. So this is a real guitar riff driven song and has got an equally rock and roll kind of solo to complement. The bulk of the tone from the original solo essentially comes from this pedal here, which is the Dunlop MXR Octavio. This one is the Jimi Hendrix Special Edition. So for the Helix, this is essentially a challenge of how good the Helix can do an octave fuzz. Let's take a listen. So I think the Helix did an okay job here, but nothing to really write home about. I found that you had to add quite a lot of fuzz to the Helix to get it in the ballpark of sounding right, but then you lost a lot of clarity, whereas with this pedal you can really kind of crank it and it screams but doesn't really lose clarity. It really cuts through and sounds great. I think that's maybe less to do with, you know, a negative side of the Helix and more to do with just how good this particular pedal is. Also, I really just love that solo, so I'm bound to be a little bit picky about it sounding not quite right. So I thought I'd give you a quick overview of how I started off the solo for this track. So the main guitar riff for All or Nothing is based around this kind of octave riff that goes a little bit like this. It's just kind of like riff of that octave. So when I came to the solo, I wanted to kind of play off of that a little bit. So the solo starts off with basically playing the same note 3 times but in different octaves. So it goes a little bit like this. So those are just octaves, and then we tap 12 frets high with our right hand, on the 19th there, and on the 17th there. Kind of gives it a cool start to the solo and really nicely kicks it off. So next up we've got the track Cold Fusion that I released as a single in October of 2022. I think this track has got a real kind of feel-good summery vibe to it, so I put a wah-laden guitar solo right at the end that I think worked really well. Interestingly, the amp tone for this was actually done entirely using the Helix. The only outboard piece of gear I used was this wah pedal, which is the custom badass Crybaby from Dunlop. So this is primarily going to be a test of how good the wah sounds are on the Helix, and I've never actually tried it, so it should be interesting. Let's see how it turned out. I know the sun still shines. Okay, so tone-wise and amp-wise, I used the exact same setting on the Helix that I did with the record, so it was obviously going to be very, very close. I ended up using the custom chrome wah pedal on the Helix, which sounded pretty good. It was a little bit noisier compared to this one. It had a bit of fuzziness and harshness to it in certain frequencies, but overall sounded okay. My main bugbear with it was that I really didn't get on with the physical foot pedal on the Helix at all. It did not feel natural or intuitive, so it was really difficult to kind of pinpoint exactly the right point in the wah that I was going for, and that really threw me off, honestly. So the wah sounds are pretty good, and the Helix would do a good job in a pinch, but I would stick with using this every day. So for Cold Fusion, there's kind of like a minute-long outro solo, which is a little bit self-indulgent, but it's just kind of like a fun summer song, so why not? So this solo is kind of cool because it starts off low down the neck and builds up all the way, and then there's almost like a second section to the solo where it goes a little bit more crazy and, you know, very fast paced and lots of notes and that kind of thing. So I like the big bends to start the solo, and this kind of pattern. And then, so it's kind of a combination of these kind of bendy stuff and more melodic elements, and then these nice kind of phrases that kind of join those things together. So we've got this one, for example. Something like that. So it's kind of the combination of those slower sections, kind of slowing everything down, big bends, more melodic, and then these faster connecting phrases that I think really help build up the solo. And then we get to the final second section of the solo where things get a bit more fast paced and we kind of bring things to a dramatic conclusion. So next up we've got the track Trick of the Light. This has got a real kind of standard classic rock guitar tone to it, so I imagine the Helix would do pretty well here. Let's take a look.
So come reach out and reach out
So yeah, fair play to the Helix here. I think it did a good job at recreating that tone. The original tone was actually a blend of one Helix amp as well as a couple of different software amps from Bias Amp. So one thing where the Helix can really come in useful in the studio is that you can get a pretty solid amp sound from the Helix itself and record a DI track at the same time. You can then add all sorts of software amps to that DI track to kind of help complement or even replace the original amp tone that you got from the Helix. This is probably how I recorded that original solo from the record. I probably got an amp sound that I liked from the Helix and recorded a DI track as well. And where I felt the Helix amp was lacking, I used the DI track in combination with some software amps to kind of help fill in the gaps. So if the Helix amp had a really nice mid-range to it but was lacking a bit of bass, I could add a bassier sound to that DI track and blend the two together to get a nice overall tone. That for me is one of the real benefits of the Helix. Some decent tones plus so much flexibility in the studio. So Trick of the Light is definitely a more laid back and simpler solo compared to the first two. So the first couple of licks go something like this. Yeah, so I can just kind of really imagine playing that on like a big Gibson ES355, loads of sustain, like feeding back and letting those notes really hang out. So last up today we've got the solo from the track Lucidity, again from my first EP, Light Shade in the Crescent Moon. The original tone for this, like Trick of the Light, would have been a blend of various different amps, some Helix, some software amps, so let's see how the Helix fared just by itself. I think the Helix did a pretty good job here, and maybe with a bit more production and a general full mix, this could have sounded a lot closer to the original. So the solo for Lucidity starts off with these volume swells on the guitar. So this is achieved by essentially playing a note with the volume off, and then bringing up the volume on your guitar using your pinky finger. So guys like Joe Bonamassa have used this to great effect. I remember hearing him do something like, I think it was like the Godfather theme in one of his like blues deluxe performances on YouTube I saw years ago. Something like this. which is pretty cool. So when playing through the Helix, I actually found it didn't react particularly naturally to the volume control. I found that there was a very quiet section right at the beginning, and then the volume picked up a bit too quickly, which made it difficult to actually time those volume swells, and I think actually as a result they sound out of time. But yeah, the beginning of the solo starts off a little bit like this. And then we kind of crank the volume up a little bit, go to the neck pickup, and then it's more kind of like just standard blues licks. And so on. So overall, I think the Helix did a pretty good job at recreating those original tones. If I had to give it a score, maybe 6.5 out of 10. It was an interesting experiment actually, as I wanted to delve a little bit deeper into the Helix itself. As I said at the beginning, I never really fell in love with any particular tone, so I was kind of hoping I might discover something that inspires me sound-wise from the Helix. But still, I'm kind of viewing this as a very useful tool for recording and in the studio, rather than anything that's particularly inspiring to play through. Alright guys, I hope you've enjoyed the very guitar-heavy chat here today. I'm going to be making a bunch more videos on various different musical topics, so do stay tuned, like and subscribe. Links to all my music can be found in the description below, and I'll catch you in the next video. Happy New Year.